It's true, Rotterdam does love StarCraft. We asked him, like, what games would you want to play or something, and he's like, no, man, I really just love StarCraft.
He plays Tears of New Earth here and there.
He does like Han. He does like, he used to be like a Han pro.
He loved Han. Actually, me and him talked about it. We're saying that it's probably the most competitive MOBA out there right now. And we were actually talking about why League of Legends actually, you know, outdid it by such a drastic margin.
Yeah, he was talking about it on the way also last night on the highway. He was just saying like how, like, because people have such high expectations of each other. Imagine if every player in StarCraft II was like a Korean that could speak English that had the mindset of Idra. Like, that's kind of like what it's like playing with 9 other people from Han, because like ex-Dota players had such high expectations, and if you were bad, they would let you know that you're bad and tell you to uninstall and everything.
Yeah, that's
and
uninstall.
Uninstall. Instead of saying like quit this game or like hurt yourself, they would just be like uninstall. That's exactly what they would tell you.
They're so BM. That's like
that's like what happened.
That's the nastiest thing you could possibly say to anybody. You're so bad, uninstall this game.
So like. I don't know, but it's. I feel like there's just so much unnecessary rivalry though, because esports is esports, and I think the success of games across platforms is really important. So I'm not here to tell you what game you should like or shouldn't like.
But
I think you should like this game between Jinro and Sheth.
Not saying you know, League of Legends is bad by any means, because I think obviously I've played it a bunch with you guys. It's a lot for me to actually take in, obviously, because there's so many champions. But you know, it's still obviously a really good game, and it's free to play, man. Who doesn't like that?
Yeah, it's alright, man.
You don't like it free to play?
I do like free to play. I don't like buying accounts, multiple accounts, just so I can access different regions. But thankfully, that's not.
How many accounts do you have?
I have 4 accounts.
4.
I have 1 Europe, 2 North American, 1 Korean.
Gotcha.
Actually, no, I have 3 North Americans. So I have 5.
Wow.
Wow. But let's focus back onto this game. We're talking about games you should like. You should definitely like Jinro versus Sheth. Sheth, of course, going for hatchery first and scouting. Now he's very, very, very safe against any kind of proxy. Look at the path he took to scout. He took the entire left-hand side, making a boomerang in the scouting formation.
Just making sure that no proxy racks actually affect him. Yeah, obviously,
it's actually
really
strong on Ohana. The way the ramp's kind of set up is almost similar to Shakur's, except you have a little bit more room to play with. So like, it's really devastating how close that ramp is. Both is to the natural ramp, is the main ramp. So
it's really important. I think everybody scouts that out. And it's funny when the Terrans do scout that out, every single Zerg's like, or excuse me, when the Zergs do scout it, every Terran is like, hacker. I knew it.
Yeah, how did you even do that?
How'd you do that? Who does that? Oh my god, if it's not there, you lose so much money. That's at least what I say to myself.
Alright. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but we can see that immediately Jinro's starting that factory. Now, early game Hellions, even though Queens did get a buff, it still has been a pretty big necessity, at least in terms of controlling early game map presence. So getting out early Hellions is not just bad by any means. Some people completely abandon them, but I still think they have their place.
Alright, I agree. I think Hellions are probably the most important unit in this early game stage. You need to keep them alive, as they still do provide a lot of coverage against, you know, different types of all-ins and etc. etc. Zergling's going to come in here and try to do a little bit of damage. Nice hold position micro going from the SCVs. If you guys notice, I always talk about this. Your SCVs, they can attack, and then the AI actually focuses the Zerglings on the SCVs, and then you just hold position, and they disengage completely if they're on attack move. It's really, really important that you do that. Jinro accidentally finishing his engineering bay in the bottom left-hand corner. He meant to just obviously stop at 849 HP. Of course, let it go a little bit too far. And
it's okay. That's okay. You know, having the engineering bay just stalling the ability to expand from Sheth. But you can see that Jinro already has his backup plan already set in motion. Gonna go for Hellion Banshee. That's pretty much what the standard TVZ is nowadays. And I think my favorite variation is Puma's variation of Hellion Banshee, where he just goes for a lot, but not necessarily to harass, but to contain Zerg a lot. It's just like he bounces back and forth, and instead of using Hellion Banshee to kind of go around and kill drones, but he uses mobility to really confuse Zerg and really limit the ability to spread creep. So I really like that from Puma.
Yeah,
because a lot of Terrans try to like send their units and they immediately die, and it's like, oh well, that was pointless.
It's interesting because I think the counter to Hellion Banshee is exactly what it aims to actually kill, which is creep spread. If you get good creep spread, Roach Spore Crawler should be able to shut this down completely. You just have a Spore Crawler in the middle over here, your Roaches can actually move around, and you're actually in a great position. But getting that position is actually really difficult, especially with all the pressure that can go down, and it can be a very daunting task to actually try to execute that. So we're going to see Jinro obviously try to attempt the denial of creep spread as much as possible. We'll see how successful he is. Nice job over here, taking out a couple creep tumors. Look at this, though. Third command center, Frodan.
Yeah, that's not too far out of the ordinary, but it does lend itself to some vulnerabilities, and I think because Jinro has already scouted enough of Sheth to realize he's not going to be doing some kind of Roach Bane all-in, then I think he understands that he can be safe for a little bit of time. Sheth can start working on this engineering bay. Going to try to be able to expand to that third really soon, but doing a good job at least continuing to creep. Sheth trying to fight with his queens, but doesn't have enough energy for a transfuse. He might lose one of those queens, but could be really valuable. And he does lose one of them, and the Hellions also just managed to back off before the Banshees are able to snipe the queen as well. So this is pretty good control from Jinro thus far. Sheth does lose several units. But at the same time, do you think it was worth losing those Banshees to snipe the queens, Andre?
Difficult to say. I think yes overall, because obviously it allows you to be sustainable a little bit later on with this Hellion Hellion Banshee composition. So overall I will say yes, because now he has to remake queens, and he has to actually focus on injecting and then spreading creep again. Not enough for transfuses, which actually gives you the ability to stabilize. So Jinro is doing everything correct.
Jinro's going to scan and take out as many creep tumors as possible. Jinro's starting +1 vehicular weapons, indicating he wants to go for a huge mech play. He has 2 factories, but he doesn't want to get his Hellions surrounded. Immediately trying to kite the Zerglings as fast as he can backwards. Jinro has to be very cautious with these Banshees as well, because he doesn't want to lose them. Keeping them throughout the mid-game is very important, especially if you're denying creep down a certain lane.
Yeah, the magic number is like 3. That's the amount of Banshees that you want before you can really start doing serious damage against, different amounts of queens. With the support of Hellions, it's really cost efficient. As you can see back here, we kind of knew this was coming. The mech is getting ready. Of course, we had a super fast armory getting +1 really quickly before any engineering base, so it's really obvious that we're seeing mech. But right now, it looks like Jinro, I don't know, he's looking kind of good. This third command center is a little bit weird in my opinion. Normally you need to go 4 factories before. You don't really want to go mech style, because there's a lot of different ways you can abuse this build as Zerg, getting so many drones and really turning up the heat. As you get into that mid-end game stage, you just have a booming economy over your opponent who really cannot keep up to that macro level.
Yeah, it's understandable, though, as well, because getting that third orbital command means 6 gases, especially as a mech. You're limited as gas. You're the one who told me that, Andre. When you go for mech early on, it's just so hard gas-wise to manage it correctly without sacrificing a ton of map control, and that's ultimately why Jinro wants to keep those Banshees alive. You can see he did a good job sniping one of those queens, but still backing off. Sheth has a hive that's pretty early as well, but this is becoming more standard of ZVT to get that earlier hive. With that, Sheth does have +2/+2 started on his double evil as well. Going to be a little bit ahead of the upgrade count. Jinro is starting to lean heavily towards Thors as well. We don't see him going for many siege tanks, and this is becoming more popular on Korean server. Marine King loves doing that kind of thing, going into mass Thors first and then into siege tanks.
Yeah, I think Thors give you, well, you make sure that you can defend against everything in the beginning stage, because it's like, okay, if I go siege tanks first, then yes, I could potentially be in a problem where I could be going against mutas. I'm in a bad position. So I think overall it is the safer route, but I think the timings for Thors are a lot more rigid, seeing as it takes a lot of investment just to get a single Thor. 200 gas a minute that you spend on, whereas siege tanks are, I believe, only 166 gas a minute. so obviously significantly less, and you can get a lot more siege out in that fashion.
Well, Jinro does have 4 factories producing all at the same time. He's still making Banshees, though. That's what's kind of cool. We do see a lot of Terrans switch out of it, eventually make Vikings. You know, they want to control the air, especially if you know your opponent is rushing for Hive Tech, which is becoming a pretty standard response. Jinro sees that Hive Tech with that scan. You can see he's trying to kite back as much as he can. These Hellions do have Blue Flame, which can completely destroy the Zergling pack, especially with only +1/+1. Nonetheless, Jinro, is he just going to sit back and turtle at this point? I mean, I don't think he really has a timing.
Yeah, I know Hana, if you're playing a macro game, you have no timings. Well, obviously, if you're playing a macro game, you have no timings. Okay, in this position, when he actually gets the 3rd command center, you lose timings completely. You just cannot do anything because even though this command center, yes, it makes money back, you're losing a lot of opportunity cost with how fast you can get your units out. So it is really difficult. I think this is an ill-fated attack because as soon as these Thors actually approach creep, you can instantly just make a ton of Banelings, and the Banelings will always catch up to the Thors. They'll always do a lot of damage, and then everything else can weaken the rest up.
What's so interesting is that Sheth has Neural Parasite, and Jinro does have those Banshees to try to see if they can snipe the Infestors, or at least force some fungals out in different areas, and just in general force energy out. A Zergling run-by attempt, Jinro sees it, has to rush back as Hellions are trying to go to the 3rd base immediately, and look at how fast those Zerglings evaporate into thin air. But Sheth does manage to snipe a lot of those Hellions, and Jinro might let the Zerglings into the main.
Nope. Denied.
Well, that was a close one.
Very nicely done by Jinro, obviously, but he does have to deal with a couple of Zerglings in the natural of his base. Final will be cleaned up most likely, but that does buy Sheth a lot of valuable time for him to make additional roaches. And all this time, look at that, 20 roaches in queue. Along with that, he has a ton of infestors. I don't know how he's going to be able to, I don't know how Jinro is going to be able to stop this force. I think the roaches are going to be enough. With the power of the Neural Parasite, he's going to be even better.
It's going to be tough because Sheth doesn't have as much creep spread as you would like, though. You would see that at this point it would be traversing around the 2nd watchtower from Sheth. He's going to go for a right side attack, though. No Neural Parasites just yet. In fact, the Infestors don't have that much energy. Sheth donating most of his army immediately in terms of the casters. You can see that Thors are doing incredible damage, and all of a sudden the Roach army is dissipating to the might of Terran Jinro with a huge attack pushing through. Sheth remaxing, but he might not have enough time before the army of Terran is going to be knocking on the production wall.
Totally miscalculated that, right? The Roach is just getting dismantled. I'm really surprised that happened. He didn't actually target down the Thors, which he needs to do. The Thors just absolutely crush him, and then the what's it called, the Infestors were just kind of...
Yeah, they had no energy to do anything.
They were just messing around there. I'm not sure what he was actually aiming to do. But now, of course, these Thors in a beautiful position here. The Roaches are going to go directly up against the Thors. Is it going to be enough? It looks like it might be, Frodan.
He's going to try to target down the Thors as fast as he can, and Jinro doesn't really have that much answer to the massive Roaches, especially with them clumped up. And Jinro going to lose the remainder of his Thors, a huge amount of supply, just like that, because Jinro is not able to really press in Sheth with a fantastic defense by the skin of his teeth. Sheth didn't even have +1 attack, which is about to finish for his Roaches, but good move by Sheth to spot the threat and immediately respond. You can see Jinro does have his 3rd base pretty much safe and saturated. Might want to start thinking about taking a 4th soon as well.
Gosh, Jinro at this point is super far behind. I mean, when you go mech, you really don't have that many rounds like you do Marines and Marauders. Those mech armies are so costly. Think about how many Thors were in there. You know, you had a good 5, 6, 7 Thors. 7 Thors is 1,400 gas. That takes you forever to actually make. Just to get the gas to do that, along with all the upgrades, it's like 4 or 5 minutes with the amount of Tech Lab factories that he has. Maybe not that much, since he has 3 Tech Labs, but it's still, what is that, 4 rounds? Yeah, it is 4 minutes, excuse me. 4 minutes of your factory production. So he needs another huge round of productions just to get that many that many Thors out. I don't think he'll be able to stop the onslaught of Zerg units. Sheth at this point doesn't even have to play for that. He can actually just deny 4th bases from here on out. It's
sort of the reverse treatment on what Terrans are trying to do to Zergs, where Zergs lose base after base while Terran trying to expand. Now Sheth has to pretty much just zone off Jinro from being able to move out. And Sheth will have a really nice advantage, especially as his hive tech continues to develop further. He's going to stay on roaches, though. He is maxed on these roaches. He's going to press in. Jinro only has 4 Thors in position. 4 other Thors are trying to run to the battle, but with Infested Terrans also dropping, looks like Jinro's chances are falling by the second. Trying to brush out SCVs to repair. Does manage to stabilize, but again, losing more time because of those Thor counts staying very, very low is really tough on Jinro, just because he can't keep affording these kinds of remaxes.
Yeah. And 38 roaches in production.
Wow.
My God, Sheth is a monster, man.
Just making more roaches.
And how can Jinro actually expand from here? He's exhausted his main. He's exhausted mostly his natural. So he's down to almost 1 base. This is like 1.5 for another minute, right? If you look at it, yeah, there's 2 minutes left on these mineral pouches. Just about 2 minutes. A little bit more than that.
Well, we can see that the siege tank's not in position. Jinro needs to get them sieged up, but there are a lot of infections and roaches, and Jinro losing this army is almost critical blow, just because Jinro has almost no resources left to remake the amount of Thors that they are here. And Jinro losing these Thors is too much of a hit, now dropping to 113 supply. Sheth still staying extremely high up there with non-stop roaches. Jinro's third is also extremely vulnerable to attack.
Jinro, I think, is dead from here. It's unfortunate, but you know, losing those type of battles is not something that you can come back from. You don't want to keep making Thors when your opponent is going roaches. You need those siege tanks in there. A Banshee is going to enter the fray, but you know, siege tanks are the way you actually kill this. GG comes out. Jinro is going to tap out, and Sheth earns himself the first win in this best of 3 series.
I thought you were going to say first win ever. I'm like, well, I don't think you're right about that. Huh?
No, definitely not.
All right, so let's break down a couple of moments of that game real quick. The biggest thing is that Jinro moving out, he cleaned up that first wave of units. Should he have backed off? Should he force himself a better position? Should he have... Because a lot of those roaches came from the third. And I imagine if he pushed the third, roaches as they pop out were dropping, so they couldn't mass up. Was that maybe not the good move to move up the natural, or should he just fall back completely?
I think you fall back from there because... at that roach count, it's really, really good. If your opponent is forced to remake roaches, think that's all the excess gas that you're normally used to, you know, encountering some sort of muta switch. But you know your opponent is going roach circlings. And then thereafter, you know your opponent doesn't really have the capacity to switch very drastically. Not only that, a lot of time has been given up, so your upgrades are going to come up. So let's say you're 2-0 against mutas. Well, the 2-0 enables you to 2-shot mutas. So now muta play is completely gone from your opponent's army composition. It's completely gone from his repertoire, right? Because they're going to be super unupgraded. So there, you drop back. You know your opponent is remaxing on roaches. You planetary fortress up your third, two command centers, whatever you want to do, and just get siege tanks. Remax in siege tanks, push. Your opponent can never stop you from there. Fair
enough. Fair enough. So game number 1 is in the books, and Sheth will take game number 1 on Ohana. That game was brought to you by iBuyPower, the PC company that powers NASL broadcasts with their fantastic pre-assembled PCs. We'll be back after a quick commercial. Don't go anywhere. Game number 2 between Sheth and Jinro will be coming up after these messages.